The snow whipped across Ethan's face as he leaned into the bitter wind, arms heavy with grocery bags for the neighbors who couldn't leave their homes. His boots crunched against the frozen ground, every step a reminder of the weight he carried not just in his hands, but in his heart. The storm showed no mercy, and neither did life. Ever since he'd lost her, the days felt endless, cold, and empty. Like this winter that refused to break, Ethan's world had slowed to a crawl. He moved through each day as if trapped in a dream he couldn't wake from. Chores filled the hours, but they never filled the ache inside him. He spoke little, smiled less, and avoided places that once held memories too sharp to bear. To others, he looked like a man surviving. Inside, he felt like a man fading dot as he trudged toward the last house on the road. His eyes caught something unusual. Just off the shoulder, in the swirl of snow, paw prints pressed into the icy slush. Fresh ones, his breath caught. In weather like this, no animal should be wandering. Yet here was proofs. Something alive was fighting the storm, walking this same road before him. His tired steps slowed. He stood at the edge of the path, staring at the faint trail leading toward the woods. Curiosity stirred, faint but insistent, breaking through the fog of his grief. Who or what was out here, pressing on in this unforgiving storm? Against reason, his heart picked up pace, pulling him toward the mystery buried beneath the snow. Ethan turned, almost ready to abandon the thought. Then it came a sound that froze him in place. A bark, faint, distant, but unmistakable, carried across the howling wind. His chest tightened. Not just an animal, but a call, a plea, for the first time in months. Ethan felt something stronger than grief. He adjusted the bags in his arms, narrowed his eyes into the storm, and stepped forward. The snow whipped sideways as Ethan trudged forward, his scarf pulled tight against the bitter wind. Just as he was about to turn back, movement caught his eye near the weather-beaten barn at the edge of town. A frail figure paced restlessly in front of it, a German shepherd, its body thin and trembling, paws raw from the frozen ground. The dog's ragged breath puffed into the cold air, each step edged with desperation. Ethan froze. He hadn't seen a shepherd in years, not since her. The animal turned suddenly, locking eyes with him. Amber eyes, clouded with both caution and plea, held him captive in that instant. The shepherd's ribs showed through its matted fur, every breath a quiet battle. It shifted its weight, and Ethan noticed the limpther, unmistakable sign of exhaustion, pain, and days of wandering without rest. His heart clenched. This was no stray born in the wild. This was a survivor. A low growl vibrated from the dog's throat, a thin veil of defiance masking its weakness. Its body angled defensively toward a pile of torn fabric at the barn's base scraps. That once might have been a blanket, now shredded by time and hunger. It wasn't just guarding scraps. It was guarding the fragile dignity of survival, the only shield it had left. Ethan took a careful step back, reading the language of its fear. In that moment, grief surged through him. His late wife had adored shepherds. She used to say their eyes carried entire stories of loyalty, courage, and heartbreak. Standing here now, Ethan felt her presence whisper in the back of his mind. The sting of memory pushed him closer, even as caution told him to turn away. She'd never forgive me if I walked past, he murmured softly, words carried off by the wind. Ethan lowered his voice, speaking gently into the storm. Easy, boy, I'm not here to hurt you. But the shepherd flinched at his movement, its muscles taut, ready to bolt. Fear and hope battled visibly in the animal's stance. One wrong step, and it would vanish into the woods. Yet something in its trembling paws told Ethan it desperately wanted to stay. Slowly, Ethan reached into his bag and set a piece of bread and a small bottle of water on the frozen ground between them. He did not push closer, did not demand trust. He simply left the offering there, stepping back into the blur of falling snow. The silence stretched fragile, waiting. Ethan turned at last, resigned to leave the choice in the dog's hands or paws. His boots crunched against the icy path, each step heavy with uncertainty. Then, faintly, another sound followed. Soft, hesitant toe-steps pressed into the snow behind him. Ethan's chest tightened as he slowed, not daring to turn too quickly. The shepherd had chosen to follow. Fragile as glass, the first thread of trust had been woven. Ethan's mornings grew into ritual. Each day he set down food a little closer to his porch, his voice low and steady as he spoke. "Easy now, boy, it's just me." The German shepherd, thin but proud, inched forward. His paws left shallow prints in the frost, but his ribs quivered with each breath. He would eat, trembling, his eyes never leaving Ethan's face, watchful, uncertain. Each mouthful was a gamble of faith, each step a test of courage. Ethan's patience became the language the dogs slowly learned to believe in. Names carried. Power, Ethan knew. And so, one morning, he whispered it. "Ranger." The word cut the silence, soft yet resolute. The shepherd's ears flicked, as if he recognized something hidden in the sound. Days passed, and Ethan repeated it, never forcing, always offering. Slowly, the once nameless stray began to respond, head tilting, tail twitching, amber eyes, sparking faint recognition. Ranger was no longer just a wandering shadow. With a name, he began to exist, not only to Ethan, but to himself. It happened one evening as the sun dipped behind bare trees. Ethan crouched, hand outstretched, breath held. Ranger hesitated, muscles taut with the instinct to flee. But then, as if some invisible thread pulled him forward, the shepherd pressed his head into Ethan's palm. The contact was brief, fragile, but it broke something inside Ethan's grief-hardened chest. His throat tightened. It had been so long since he'd felt a simple act of trust, so long since another soul leaned on him without judgment. Ranger's gesture was small, but to Ethan, it was everything. Ethan dusted off the old doghouse by the shed, its boards warped and roof sagging. With steady hands, he patched the holes, hammered nails, and lined it with fresh straw. When it was done, Ranger circled the space cautiously, sniffing every corner, tail stiff. Then, with a deep sigh, he curled inside. Watching him settle, Ethan felt something stir, flicker of home. For the first time in years, he wasn't just repairing wood. He was rebuilding belonging. Winter roads stretched silent and long, and Ethan found himself no longer walking them alone. Ranger padded behind him, always a few steps back, never closer than the dog allowed. No words were exchanged, but the rhythm of their footsteps echoed companionship. Over time, Ethan would glance back and catch the shepherd's gaze steady, unblinking, loyal. It wasn't loud, their bond. It grew in silence, in the comfort of knowing someone was there, step after step. One night, Ethan jolted awake to the sound of desperate whimpers. Ranger thrashed in his sleep, legs kicking, teeth bared at invisible enemies. Ethan's heart clenched. Hey, you're safe now," he whispered, kneeling beside the trembling dog, but Ranger's haunted cries revealed a history Ethan could not yet touch a story. written in scars and shadows. It left Ethan awake long after, wondering what horrors the shepherd carried with him into the dark. Ethan's doubts crept in with the silence. Alone in his kitchen, he stared at Ranger curled on the rug. His voice, soft but weighted, broke the stillness. "I don't know if I'm enough for you," he confessed. "I've already failed once. What if I can't give you what you need?" The words weren't for the dog alone. They were the echoes of his grief, his fear of loving and losing again. Yet Ranger's steady breathing seemed to answer, reminding him that sometimes presence itself was enough. Days blurred into weeks, and in their quiet rhythm, something fragile began to mend. Ethan, once numb with loss, felt the stirrings of responsibility and care. Ranger, once bound by fear, learned the warmth of human kindness. To broken souls, scarred by different battles, found themselves leaning on each other, step by step. They learned a trust wasn't about erasing pain, but about sharing the weight of it. Just as peace seemed to settle, Ranger stiffened on a walk, ears pricking, muscles tense. His amber eyes narrowed in the distance, a low growl rumbling deep in his chest. Ethan froze. Someone was out there. Trouble from Ranger's past had found its way back, and the fragile world they had built now hung by a thread. The growl of an engine shattered the quiet evening. Ethan stiffened as headlights swept across the front yard, carving long shadows through the trees. A dented pickup lurched to a stop, gravel crunching under its tires. A man climbed out, his frame heavy, his jaw set hard like stone. He moved, with the confidence of someone who believed the world and everything in it belonged to him. His eyes locked on Ranger. With a calloused hand, he pointed, "That's my dog." The words dripped with ownership, not love. Ranger froze, every muscle taut. His ears flattened, his tail tucked tight, and then came the low, guttural growl, fear tangled with fury. He took a step back, trembling, teeth flashing in warning, but his eyes betrayed him. They weren't the eyes of a predator, they were the eyes of prey, remembering the hand that had once struck too many times. Ethan saw the truth in a heartbeat. This wasn't a reunion. This was terror returning in flesh. The man's gaze hardened. "You've been feeding him, haven't you? No wonder he won't come when I call." He spat on the ground. Ethan's stomach twisted as fragments of understanding pieced together the limp in Ranger's gait, the hesitation at sudden movements, the nightmares that tore through his sleep. The scars on Ranger's body were not the work of wilderness, but of cruelty. Ethan's jaw tightened. He had once buried a wife, crushed by helplessness. He would not bury this dog's trust in the same silence. His pulse thundered. He could let Ranger go, avoiding the fight. It would be simpler, safer. But as Ranger pressed closer, trembling against his leg, Ethan knew what that choice meant. To surrender him now was to betray the fragile bridge they had built, plank by plank, day by day. The man's boots ground the gravel as he stepped forward. Ethan's throat went dry. He was a widower, not a fighter, yet in his heart a truth settled. Some bonds were worth the storm. "Move aside, old man," the stranger barked, voice sharp with rage. His hand lifted, palm cocked as though ready to strike. Ranger snapped into motion. With a sudden lunge, he leaped between them, not with teeth, aimed to maim, but with a shield of desperate courage. His growl rose into the night, a warning that said more than words ever could. "You will not hurt him." Ethan's chest tightened. The dog who once cowered in the shadows now stood in defiance, not for himself, but for him. Something inside Ethan broke free. A voice, he thought, had been buried. With his wife's coffin roared to life. Enough. His shout shook the air, ringing with a conviction he hadn't felt in years. His hands clenched into fists as his eyes locked onto the man's. Touch him, and I swear I'll call the sheriff right now. You'll answer for every scar on that dog. It wasn't just a threat. It was a vow, fueled by grief, turned into fire. The man faltered, anger sparking in his eyes, but the growl of Ranger at Ethan's side left no room for doubt. His lips curled, but his feet shifted back toward the truck. This ain't over, he spat, climbing into the cab. The engine roared again, the vehicle rattling down the gravel road, red taillights vanishing into the dark. Yet the echo of his promise lingered, a shadow of danger that had not been erased. Silence settled heavily after the truck disappeared. Ethan looked down, his hand finding Ranger's trembling back. Slowly, the dog eased against him, still shivering, but unbroken. Two souls, once shattered by loss and cruelty, stood together in defiance of the past. Their wounds had not healed completely, but tonight they had chosen each other, and in that choice they were no longer alone. The papers slid across the desk with a soft scratch, the final signature marking a quiet victory. Ethan's hand trembled as he set the pen down, the weight of the moment pressing deeper than ink on paper. Ranger sat faithfully at his feet, golden, eyes watching with a mixture of trust and curiosity. What began as survival had now become permanence, not just in heart, but in law. The man who once feared opening his door to life again had chosen it and chosen him. The days that followed were small but powerful testaments to change. Ranger's once matted coat gleamed now under the sunlight, his gait strong and sure, his ribs no longer visible beneath his fur. Ethan, too, began to mirror this transformation. The shadows under his eyes softened, his voice found steadier rhythms, and the grief that had gripped him like winter frost began to melt. The healing was not one-sided. They were mending together. Life slowly settled into a rhythm neither had expected, but both desperately needed. Mornings became runs down the winding trail, Ranger's paws pounding the earth in tandem with Ethan's breath. Evenings softened into shared meals and quiet fireside hours, where words spilled from Ethan as though his late wife was still listening. Only now they were spoken to by a companion who answered with unwavering eyes and the thump of a loyal tail. Neighbors, who had once lowered their voices when speaking of Ethan, now waved with genuine smiles. They heard his laughter, saw his lighter step, and marveled at the way Ranger never left his side. "He looks alive again," one whispered to another, watching man and dog cross the street together. What no one said aloud, but all silently knew, was that Ranger had given Ethan back something irreplaceable, life itself. Ranger no longer trembled at every passing shadow. His ears, once flattened in fear, now stood tall and proud. He walked beside Ethan with the calm assurance of a creature who finally knew he belonged. Each step was steady, each glance held confidence. He was not a stray anymore, he was family. On a crisp winter morning, Ethan returned with Ranger to the stretch of snowy road where fate had first tied them together. The air was still, the world quiet. Ranger pressed close, his warm body leaning into Ethan's leg, tail wagging slowly. Ethan bent low, whispering words that carried the weight of everything unspoken. "You're home now. Forever." For the first time in years, Ethan felt peace. Standing on that road, Ranger at his side, he no longer carried the heavy emptiness of loss. Instead, he carried love renewed, sealed in loyalty, courage, and second chances. Together, They had closed one chapter, only to write a new one. Compassion, Ethan realized, had not only saved a wandering dog, it had rescued him, too. By opening his door, he had unknowingly opened his heart. Ranger's presence stitched together the torn edges of his grief, proving that kindness heals on both sides of the bond. Neither man nor dog had been ready to trust at first, but with each shared meal, each walk, each quiet moment by the fire, something stronger grew between them. Trust was not instant. It was earned, patiently, step by step, until it became unbreakable. Ethan had never gone looking for love again, yet love had found him on a frozen roadside, wrapped in fur and trembling with need. It reminded him that even in life's darkest hours, a loyal soul may arrive to walk beside us. In the end, their story was about more than survival, it was about renewal. Ethan gave Ranger a second chance at life, and Ranger gave Ethan a second chance at love. Family, Ethan discovered, is not always born, it is chosen.